the wind off the Mississippi River that fateful night in December 2024 was more than just cold. It was a merciless blade, slicing through the thin veil of warmth in my little brick house on Romberg Avenue. At 76 years old, Ida McAllister, everyone calls me Grandma, Dee had grown accustomed to the solitude that wrapped around me like an old, threadbare quilt. Ray, my husband of 52 years, had slipped away 5 years prior, taken by a heart that finally gave out after decades of steady, quiet love. The house still echoed with his absence, the creak of the floorboards where he'd paced during thunderstorms, the faint scent of his pipe tobacco lingering in the curtains, the empty chair at the kitchen table where we'd shared countless cups of coffee. I'd turned the television volume down low that evening, just enough to catch the 10 o'clock news murmuring about holiday sales and impending snowstorms, but mostly so I could hear the river's ice cracking like distant gun sound that always reminded me of how fragile life could be. I was sipping chamomile tea from my favorite chipped mug, the one Ray had bought me on our honeymoon in Niagara Falls back in 1968, when the doorbell pierced the quiet, once sharp and insistent, then again a frantic barrage, as if the person outside was pounding with desperation rather than ringing. My heart stuttered in my chest. Who could it be at this hour? Carolers, perhaps, braving the freeze for a bit of holiday cheer, or maybe old Mr. Jensen from next door, locked out again after forgetting his keys in his rush to feed the stray cats. I shuffled to the door in my worn slippers, the ones with the fuzzy lining that Ray had always teased me about, calling them my cloud feet. Flipping on the porch light, I peered through the frosted glass panel. What I saw stole the breath from my lungs. There stood a young woman, no older than her dark hair dusted with snow like powdered sugar on a forgotten cake. Her cheeks were raw, chapped red from the biting wind, and she clutched 2 bundles wrapped in thin blankets against her chest. Babies, I realized with a jolt. The streetlight cast a harsh glow, illuminating the tears frozen on her eyelashes like tiny diamonds of despair. Her lips trembled, tinged with blue, and her eyes, oh, those eyes held a hollow, haunted look that spoke of a soul teetering on the edge of breaking. "Ma'am," she whispered, her voice cracking like the thin ice on the river's edge, barely audible over the howling wind. "Please, my husband died last week, and his parents, they just put us out in the snow. I don't have anywhere else to go." Her words tumbled out in ragged breaths, each one laced with exhaustion and fear. The smaller bundle in her arms let out a pitiful hiccup, not a full wail, but the kind that comes from a child too cold, too weary to protest properly. It pierced my heart like a needle. I didn't hesitate. Lord knows, in that moment, all the years of loss and loneliness surged up inside me, but so did a fierce, protective instinct I thought had died with Ray. "Get in here, child," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands as I swung the door wide open. "All 3 of you, right now, before you freeze solid out there." She hesitated for a split second, her eyes darting as if expecting the offer to vanish like a cruel mirage. Then, with a shaky nod, she stepped over the threshold, snowflakes melting instantly on the warm hardwood floor. I closed the door behind her, shutting out the night's fury, and in that instant, Ashlyn Harper and her 2 little ones, Eva and Noah, walked into my life, forever altering its quiet course. She stood there in the hallway, still bundled in her threadbare coat, snow pooling at her feet like tears on the floor. The babies stirred faintly, their tiny faces peeking out from the blankets, chilled, with noses red and runny. Ashlyn's hands trembled as she held them close, her knuckles white from the effort. She looked like she'd been walking for hours, her boots caked with slush, her jeans soaked through at the hems. The air around her carried the faint, acrid scent of desperation or washed clothes, fierce sweat, and the metallic temps of cold. "I'm so sorry to bother you," she stammered, her voice breaking again. "I didn't know where else to go. I saw your light on. It was the only one. Everyone else's houses were dark." Her eyes filled with fresh tears, spilling over and tracing salty paths down her cheeks. "My name's Ashlyn Harper. These are my babies. Ava's for Noah's too. Caleb, my husband, he was in an accident. Black ice on Highway 20. The semi. He didn't make it." She choked on the words, her body swaying as if the grief might topple her. I reached out, gently taking the smaller bundle from her arms. He was feather-light, his little body rigid with cold, his breath coming in shallow puffs. "Hush, now, darlin'," I murmured to him, rocking instinctively as I led them deeper into the house. "Lord have mercy on us all. You're safe here. Let's get you warmed up." Ashlyn followed me like a ghost, her footsteps hesitant on the creaky floors. I guided her to the kitchen, flipping on the light that bathed the room in a warm, yellow glow. The clock on the wall ticked relentlessly, marking midnight as she sank into a chair at the table, still clutching Ava. The girl, wide-eyed and silent, stared at me with the unblinking curiosity of a child who'd seen too much too soon. Her hair was matted, her pajamas peeking out from the blanket stained and worn. "Tell me everything," I said softly, as I set Noah down in Ray's old high chair dusted off from the attic where it's sat since my grandkids outgrew it, and busied myself heating milk on the stove. The gas flame hissed to life, a small comfort in the heavy silence. Ashlyn's story poured out in halting fragments, each word laced with raw pain. "We were married 2.5 years ago at St. Mary's, the big Catholic church up on the hill. Caleb was everything to me. Strong, kind. He drove trucks for a company out of Pia, long hauls, but he always came home with a smile and a story. December 21st, just before Christmas, he hit black ice. The police said he didn't suffer, but how do they know? How?" Her voice rose, cracking, and she buried her face in her hands. "No life insurance. We were young, thought we had time. No savings, every penny went to the babies, the rent. We'd been staying with his parents, Ron and Sheila, out on Peru Road. They seemed okay at first, but after the funeral, tonight, they handed me 2 trash bags of our clothes and said, 'We can't raise your kids, you're on your own. Figure it out.'" She mimicked their cold tones, her face twisting in anguish. "They pushed us out the door into the snow. Noah's got asthma, he needs his inhaler. They wouldn't even give it to me, said it was on their insurance. I walked, God, I don't know how far. The babies were crying, freezing. I thought we'd die out there." Her shoulders shook with sobs, great heaving ones that seemed to come from the depths of her soul. Ava whimpered, clinging tighter, and Noah let out another hiccup. I felt my own eyes sting, memories of my own losses flooding back. Ray's final breath in the hospital, the empty bed, the silence that followed. But this was cruelty beyond imagining. "Those monsters," I whispered, more to myself than her. How could they do that to their own blood? I poured the warm milk into sippy cups I'd kept for visiting grandkids, adding a dash of honey for comfort. "Drink this, little ones," handing one to Ava, to Ash. I passed the mug of hot cocoa, the steam rising like a prayer. "And you, child, sip slow. You're home now. No one's putting you out again." She looked up at me, her eyes red-rimmed and disbelieving. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know me." "Because I've been alone," I said simply, sitting across from her and taking her free hand in mine. It was ice cold, the skin rough from hardship, and because no mother and her baby should be left to the wolves, not on my watch. That night, as I led them to the back bedroom, the one with Ray's flannel shirts still hanging in the closet, their plaid patterns faded but familiar, I pulled out the quilts my mama had pieced together in 1962, each stitch a testament to endurance. The fabric was soft, worn from years of use, smelling faintly of lavender from the sachets I tucked in the linen closet. I ran a warm bath in the clawfoot tub, the water steaming up the mirror as I helped Ashlyn undress the children. Noah splashed weakly, his tiny fingers prune-wrinkled already from the cold outside, while Ava sat silently, letting the warmth seep into her bones. Ashlyn kept apologizing, her voice a broken record. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. McAllister. We'll be gone by morning, I promise." "I don't want to impose, young lady," I replied firmly, wrapping Noah in a fluffy towel that swallowed him whole. "The only place you're going is to bed, and you'll call me Grandma D, like every other stray I've ever taken in. Now, hush that nonsense," she cried then, sitting on the edge of the bed in borrowed pajamas that hung loose on her slender frame. Great, wrenching sobs that shook her entire body, as if all the grief she'd bottled up was finally spilling over. I sat beside her, rubbing her back in slow circles, the way I'd done for my daughter, Megan, during her teenage heartbreaks, or when her own husband left her years ago. "Let it out, darlin'," I murmured. "You've carried too much for too long." Word spread like wildfire through the bluffs of Dubuque, carried on the whispers of neighbors and the hum of church gossip. By New Year's Eve, the east side buzzed with the tale of Grandma D harboring a widow and 2 orphans in her spare room. The parish ladies from St. Mary's descended like a flock of benevolent birds, arms laden with casseroles, tuna noodle with crunchy toppings, green bean with fried onions, ham and potato au gratin stacked so high on my counter they threatened to topple. "God bless you, D," Mrs. O'Malley said, her eyes misty as she handed over a steaming dish. "These poor lambs need all the help they can get. Father Tom, The kindly priest, with a voice like warm molasses, knocked on my door the next day, an envelope bulging in his hand. "This is from the collection after Caleb's funeral mass," he explained, pressing it into Ashlyn's reluctant palms. "The congregation wanted you to have it. Use it for the children." Ashlyn stared at the money, hundreds of dollars, enough to buy diapers, formula, and maybe a few warm coats, and tried to push it back. "I can't take this, Father. It's too much. We don't deserve pride. Don't keep the lights on or bellies full," I interjected gently, folding her fingers around the envelope. "Take it, child, for Ava and Noah." January descended upon us like a relentless storm, the Mississippi freezing solid into a glassy expanse that mirrored the gray skies above. The wind howled through the cracks in the old house, and my ancient furnace coughed and sputtered like an old smoker gasping for air. Nights were the worst. Ashlyn would bolt upright in bed, screaming Caleb's name into the darkness. "Caleb, no. Come back," her cries echoing down the hall. I'd rush in, wrapping her in my arms as she trembled, sweat-soaked despite the chill. "He's gone, Grandma D," she'd whisper through tears. "Every time I close my eyes, I see the truck flipping, hear the metal screaming. How do I make it stop?" Little Ava, with her big brown eyes and curls that framed her face like a halo, started asking questions that tore at my soul. "Why is Daddy sleeping under the snow, Grandma D?" she'd say, her voice small and confused as we sat by the window watching flakes fall. "Is he cold? Can we bring him a blanket?" I'd pull her onto my lap in the rocking chair, the same one where I'd nursed my own children decades ago, and hum Amazing Grace, my voice cracking on the high notes. "Daddy's with Jesus now, sweetheart," I'd explain, stroking her hair. "He's warm and safe, watching over you like a guardian angel." Noah, the baby, was a bundle of quiet misery. His asthma flared in the dry winter air, his breaths coming in wheezy gasps that kept us up at night. We'd take turns holding him upright, steam from the shower filling the bathroom, as we tried to ease his lungs. Ashlyn's face during those episodes was a mask of terror, eyes wide, lips pressed, thin as if losing him would be the final blow. "He's all I have left of Caleb," she'd confide, her voice barely above a whisper. "If something happens to him." Ashlyn's own condition was heartbreaking. At 20, she should have been vibrant, full of life, but grief had hollowed her out. Her clothes hung loose on a frame thinned by skipped meals and endless worry. Dark circles ringed her eyes, and her hands, once soft, she told me, were chapped and raw from scrubbing floors and odd jobs she'd picked up before the tragedy. She barely ate, pushing food around her plate while ensuring the children had full bellies. "I can't stomach it," she'd admit, staring at the casserole. "Everything tastes like ash." I learned her story in fragments, shared over late-night cups of tea when the house was quiet save for the tick of the clock. Born in a rundown trailer outside Zwingler speck of a town with 9 souls if you counted the strayed, childhood was a tapestry of hardship. Her mother, hooked on pain pills after a back injury, cycled through boyfriends who brought more chaos than stability. "One of them hit me once," Ashlyn confessed one night, her voice flat with old pain. "Mama chose him over me, said I was exaggerating." At 16, juvenile rheumatoid arthritis struck like lightning, inflaming her joints until walking was agony, holding a pencil impossible. "The doctors in Iowa City said I'd be in a wheelchair by 20, she recalled, tears welling. "I prayed every night for it to stop, but it only got worse." Then came the youth group from the little Pentecostal church in Bernard. They'd visit with baskets of fried chicken, homemade biscuits, and fervent prayers. One evening, the pastor's wife laid hands on her in that cramped trailer living room, invoking the Holy Spirit with a passion that shook the walls. "I felt heat rush through me," Ashlyn described, her eyes distant, like a fire burning out the pain. "The next morning, I could walk without limping. Doctors called it spontaneous remission. I called it a miracle from Jesus." Baptized in the icy Maquoketa River the following Sunday, the water so cold it stole her breath, Ashlyn found faith in Caleb Harper. He was 21, built like a linebacker, with a laugh that could chase away clouds. He pulled me out of the water, wrapped me in a towel, and said, "Welcome to the family, Ash." She reminisced, a ghost of a smile crossing her lips. They courted under the watchful eyes of the church, married 6 months later at St. Mary's, because Ashlyn dreamed of walking down the aisle beneath those towering, stained glass windows depicting saints and miracles. "Caleb promised me the world," she said softly, "but he gave me something better, Ava and Noah, our little family." Then the highway claimed him, shattering everything. The in-laws, Ron and Sheila, had always been distant, judgmental of Ashlyn's Pentecostal roots, clashing with their staunch Catholicism. After Caleb's death, Their facade cracked. They blamed me, Ashlyn wept. Said if we'd saved more, if I'd worked instead of staying home with the kids. Tonight, Sheila shoved the trash bags at me and said, "You're not our blood. Take your brats and go." Ron just stood there, arms crossed, like I was trash myself. The misery of her situation weighed on her like an anchor. Bills piled up, utilities threatening shut off, medical debts from Noah's checkups, the funeral costs that ate through what little they had. Ashlyn pounded the pavement, applying for jobs at every corner. Cashier at Hy-Vee, waitress at the casino, even maid at the Grand Harbor Resort. No experience, no childcare. "Sorry, ma'am," they'd say, doors closing one after another. She'd return home defeated, collapsing on the couch with Ava curled against her, whispering apologies to the air. "I'm failing them, Grandma D. What kind of mother can't provide?" One particularly brutal afternoon in March, on Noah's second birthday, Ashlyn broke. She'd called the inn, begging for his inhaler. They still held his medical card. Sheila's voice on the phone was ice cold. "We told you we're done, Ashlyn. Don't call here again. You're not family." Ashlyn hung up, slid to the kitchen floor, and sobbed until she retched, her body convulsing. I knelt beside her, holding her hair back, wiping her face with a cool cloth. "Enough," I declared inwardly. "This ends now." I wasn't one to sit idle. 50 years in Dubuque had woven me a network of friends, sturdy threads of community. I called my daughter Megan, the nurse in Cedar Rapids, who wired money for Noah's medicine, and promised to visit. "Mom, you're a saint," she said over the phone, her voice thick with emotion. I phoned Father Tom, who rallied the church for more aid. The Quilt Guild ladies sewed blankets and clothes, dropping them off with hugs and prayers. And quietly, I tipped off Channel 7 News. "There's a story here," I told the reporter, a young woman named Lisa, with kind eyes, about cruelty and kindness in equal measure. April brought tentative warmth, the dogwoods blooming pink along the riverbanks like promises of renewal. Ashlyn began to heal, bit by bit. She'd join me in the garden, knees in the dirt, planting seeds with hands that no longer shook as badly. Noah toddled behind with his plastic shovel, giggling as soil smudged his cheeks. Ava flourished, learning to read on the living room couch amid towers of library books, Dr. Seuss, fairy tales, Bible stories. Our days fell into a rhythm. Oatmeal bubbling on the stove with Saturday morning cartoons blaring, story hour at the library where Ava's eyes lit up at tales of adventure, grilled cheese sandwiches at the kitchen table where Ray once carved Thanksgiving turkey with flourish. Yet the grief lingered, a shadow in the corners. Some nights Ashlyn stood at the window, gazing at the Julian Dubuque bridges, twinkling lights. "I just want him to come home, Grandma D," she'd whisper, her voice aching. To hear his laugh, feel his arms around me, is that too much to ask? I knew that longing intimately. Mornings, I'd still set out 2 coffee cups out of habit, only to remember with a pang. "Time softens it," I'd tell her, "but it never fully goes away. We carry them in our hearts." Then, in May, the miracle unfolded, a twist of fate that felt divinely orchestrated. The Dubuque Fighting Saints hockey team hosted a charity raffle, proceeds for widows and orphans. I splurged $20 on tickets, mostly because Ava adored the mascot, a fierce saint with a hockey stick. We attended the game, Ava on my lap, cheering wildly, Noah asleep in Ashlyn's arms, when the MC announced the winner for the brand new Ford Escape fully loaded, 0 miles, worth $38,000. My name echoed through the arena. Dolores McAllister. The crowd blurred as I made my way to the stage, my Sunday dress swishing, my legs wobbling like a newborn fawn. Cameras flashed, murmurs rippled. I took the keys, shiny and new, and turned to Ashlyn in the stands. "These are for you, child," I said into the microphone, my voice amplified and trembling. "May they carry you forward." The arena fell silent, then exploded in applause, cheers, tears. Ashlyn froze, Noah in her arms, tears streaming as strangers hugged her. "Grandma D, I can't," she stammered later. Backstage, "You can, and you will," I insisted. "It's God's way of providing." The story hit the front page of the Telegraph Herald. 76-year-old Dubuque widow gifts $38,000. Car 2 young widow and orphans. Photos captured the moment, my wrinkled hand passing the keys, Ashlyn's tear-streaked face. The tide turned swiftly. Donations flooded in. Envelopes of cash slipped under the door. Checks from across Iowa. A dealership in Asbury offered Ashlyn an office job, flexible hours, full benefits, discounted childcare at their on-site center. "We saw the story," the manager said, shaking her hand. "Your family now, the local credit union erased Caleb's lingering truck loan, calling it a gift to honor his memory. St. Mary's School pledged scholarships for Ava and Noah, ensuring their education. Strangers Venmoed funds with messages like, "From one widow to another, keep going," or "God bless your strength." Ron and Sheila Harper watched it unfold on TV, their faces no doubt twisting in envy or shame. 2 days later, they appeared on my porch, dressed in Sunday finery, Sheila clutching a cheap stuffed teddy bear, as if it could erase their sins. We've been worried sick," Sheila simpered, fake tears glistening. "We want to see our grandbaby. Family forgives, after all." Ashlyn stood behind me, arms crossed, Ava's small hand in hers. I blocked the doorway, my voice carrying to the neighbors peeking from windows. "Sheila, you tossed these innocents into a blizzard the week their father died. You don't get a second chance just because the spotlight's on." Ron puffed up red-faced. "Now, Dolores, be reasonable. Blood is thicker than God forgives," Ashlyn interjected, stepping forward with a newfound steel in her voice. Her eyes blazed, no longer hollow but fierce. "I'm still praying on it, but my children have a real family now, one that doesn't abandon them in the snow." "Goodbye." She shut the door firmly, the click resounding like a final judgment. We didn't look back. Summer arrived in a burst of warmth and color, the river sparkling under blue skies. We affixed a plaque to the mailbox. The home. Ashlyn enrolled in night classes at Northeast Iowa Community College, studying to become a medical assistant like Megan. "I want to help others heal," she explained, poring over textbooks at the kitchen table while the kids slept. Ava prepared for kindergarten, her new backpack, a gift from the fire department, slung proudly over her shoulder. Noah claimed the teddy bear, oblivious to its origins, cuddling it during naps. Evenings found us on the porch, watching barges chug up the Mississippi, their lights dancing on the water like fallen stars. Ashlyn would lean her head on my shoulder, whispering, "Mom," when she thought I wasn't listening. The house brimmed with life again, cartoons blaring, pots boiling over with macaroni, little feet thundering up the stairs Ray had built with calloused hands. At 76, I felt reborn, my days filled with purpose. Some mornings, I still set 2 coffee cups, but now, the table held 5 mismatched mugs for our patchwork family. The Bible says the Lord sets the lonely in families. He used a stubborn old widow on Romberg Avenue to prove it, with a community's mercy lifting us all. If you're driving through Dubuque and spot a brick house overflowing with flowers, a Ford Escape in the drive bearing an "in memory of Caleb" sticker, know there's love inside, hard-won and radiant. And if you've got an empty room and a beating heart, leave your porch light on. Miracles arrive in slippers and tears. Like, comment, share if this touched your soul. Tell me below, have you been someone's miracle or had one knock on your door? This is Grandma D, signing off from Dubuque, Iowa. God bless, and hold the lonely close.